you're watching MNN Midday. Up to the minute, breaking news from around the world. Good evening and welcome to Midday. At the top of the hour, India's coronavirus infections cross 18 million. India's total COVID-19 cases passed 18 million at this hour after another world record of daily infections as gravediggers worked around the clock, burying victims and rows of funeral pyres were built in parks and parklands. The pyres are the Indian tradition of cremating a body as opposed to a traditional burial. India reported 379,257 new COVID-19 cases and 3,645 new deaths today, according to the health ministry. It was the country's highest number of deaths reported on a single day since the start of the pandemic. The world's second most populous nation is in deep crisis with its hospitals and morgues overwhelmed and healthcare professionals struggling to cope with the pandemic. A Mumbai gravedigger named Syed Minor Kamruddin said he and his colleagues working nonstop to bury COVID-19 victims. He says, "I'm not scared of COVID. I work with courage. It's all about courage, not about fear," he said. This hour in Asia, Taiwan evacuates a hotel to sterilize it after rare COVID-19 break. Taiwan began moving more than 400 people to a centralized quarantine facility today for an airport hotel after a rare domestic outbreak of COVID-19 and will sterilize the entire hotel building. Taiwan has kept the pandemic well under control because of early and effective preventions, including largely closing its borders. Most cases have been imprinted from abroad through the island and reported sporadic domestic infections in recent months. Now, since last week, it has reported COVID-19 infections in 9 freighter pilots from Taiwan's largest carrier, China Airlines Limited, some of whom have been staying at the Novotel Taipei, Taiwan International Airport Hotel, now being evacuated. Now, they are thought to have been infected overseas. Health Minister Chen Shih-chung told reporters that an infected hotel worker was in intensive care and that the government had decided to move all 412 at the hotel, including pilots and staff, to a centralized quarantine facility for testing. The hotel is being thoroughly sterilized, he added. "We are worried that other workers may also have been infected," Chen said. Now, China Airlines, which has had to cancel some flights while its pilots are tested, said it was fully compliant with governmental epidemic prevention steps and stepping up vaccinations for their staff. In healthcare breakthroughs, an experimental drug shows potential against Alzheimer's disease. Researchers have designed an experimental drug to reverse key symptoms of Alzheimer's disease in mice. The drug works by reinvigorating a cellular cleaning mechanism that gets rid of unwanted proteins by digesting and recycling them. Now, researchers at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine have designed an experimental drug that reverses key symptoms of Alzheimer's disease within mice. The study was published online in a journal Cell. Now, discoveries in mice don't always translate to humans, especially in Alzheimer's disease. Now, Anna Maria Cuervo, a doctor at the Robert and Renee Belfar Chair for the Study of Neurodegenerative Diseases, said this. She said, "But we were encouraged to find in our own study that the drop-off in cellular cleaning that contributes to Alzheimer's in mice also occurs in people with the disease, suggesting that our drug may also work in humans." Now, in the 1990s, Dr. Cuervo discovered the existence of this cell cleaning process, known as chaperone-mediated autophagy, or CMA for short, and has published 200 papers on its role in health and disease. In America, Gen X emerging from pandemic with firmer grip on America's wallet. Crammed between the cultural extremes of the baby boomers and the millennials, members of Generation X saw their wealth jump during the Trump administration and through the coronavirus pandemic as they hit their prime earning years during a record bull market for stocks. Recent Federal Reserve data showed Gen Xers, which the U.S. Central Bank defines as those currently between the ages of 40 and 55, passed a major milestone last year. Their share of household net worth at 26.9% passed the generation roughly 26.8% share of households. Now, a byproduct of population aging as the World War II era silent generation and the boomers who follow both decline as a share of households, the shift nonetheless marks a passing of the torch of sorts. Now, in short, Generation X is now the ascendant generation in terms of wealth. Moreover, Generation Xers are emerging from the pandemic more flush with cash than when it began, and with most of them still looking ahead to more decades of peak earnings. At the start of the Trump administration in 2017, the 34.6 million households headed by a Generation X held just 17.4% of the household net worth. That had jumped to 25.4% by the end of 2019 and continued expanding during the pandemic, according to quarterly Fed data that estimates the distribution of assets and liabilities among households by race, age, and education. Now, boomers still hold more than half of U.S. households' net worth at around 52.7%, well above their roughly 33% of households. But that figure peaked at 55.8% in the fall of 2016 and fell nearly half a percentage point in 2020, and will likely continue to drop. Now, millennials, considered those aged 24 to 39 at the end of last year, still own less than 5% of household net worth, and despite accounting for nearly 30% of all households. In business, Caterpillar beats earnings estimates as global recovery boosts sales. For Caterpillar Incorporated, reported quarterly earnings that exceeded analyst expectations today, as demand for its machines was propelled by the fastest global economic growth since the 1970s. The Illinois-based manufacturer of heavy machinery, a bellwether for economic activity, said stronger retail demand led dealers to boost inventories more in the latest quarter than a year ago, driving sales across all of its three primary segments. Now, adjusted profit was $2.87 per share, up from $1.65 per share a year earlier. Now, analysts surveyed by Refinitiv on average expected earnings of $1.94 per share. The company's shares were up about 3% at $239.25 in pre-market trading. The stock has surged 27% since its earnings last report, outperforming the broader blue chip Dow Jones Industrial Average. Now, equipment sales rose 13% year on year to $11.2 billion, led by a 72% surge in construction machine sales in Asia. And finally today in technology, China's Baidu to launch paid driverless ride-hailing services in Beijing. Baidu will launch paid driverless robo-taxi services in Beijing on this May 2nd. The Chinese tech giant announced on today, making it among the first companies in the country to offer autonomous driving robotaxi services to paying users. Now, Baidu's driverless Apollo robotaxi to be launched in the Chinese capital's Shaogang Park and will operate without a safety driver behind the steering wheel. The company said, adding that users can hail and pay for a robotaxi ride through the Apollo Go app. The company has been testing autonomous driving on public roads since October in Beijing. Now, Baidu has over the years developed smart car technologies, including high-definition maps with the autonomous driving unit Apollo established by itself in 2017. Now, for Midday, this is Charles Rivers. We'll see you around the world tomorrow. Thank you.